Our first story is kind of bittersweet, but I'm leaning more on sweet. So, for the last 3 or so years, all we have heard from the Liberals is Pierre Poilievre refuses to get his security clearance. And why won't Pierre get his security clearance? And we've explained it. Pierre's explained it. But here's just a couple of clips of the time frame on this, and I only grabbed a few. And we're going to end it with Pierre Poilievre actually explaining it to Mark Carney during the English-speaking debate in the 2025 election. So, here's the first part of this story.
It is inexplicable to our security services that they cannot let the leader of the Conservative Party know about the threats facing him, his party, and our democracy because he refuses to get a security clearance.
Pierre Poilievre hasn't ever bothered to get his security clearance. I've already, during this leadership campaign, filled out my forms. It wasn't that hard to do, I have to say, and put them in, and I fully expect to get it in the near future.
And now, in the face of President Trump's threats, Pierre Poilievre still refuses to get his security clearance.
I'd like to hear an explanation as to why the leader of the official opposition refuses to seek top security clearance so that he can be briefed on these matters that you care so much about.
And Mr. Poilievre, it is now 950 days, if my numbers are right, since you've had the opportunity to get your top secret security clearance, and you've refused. Why?
Well, first of all, I have got my security clearance when I was a minister. I got top secret clearance at the time, so there's no problem getting that. But when the government made this recent offer, they said that if I got the security clearance briefings, that I would be gagged under the security law, and I could be prosecuted if I spoke freely about matters of foreign interference. Now, given that Canada has experienced Chinese interference by Beijing, the government of China, in 2 consecutive elections, I needed to do my job to speak freely without fear of prosecution. And that was not something I would be allowed to do. Even Thomas Mulcair, the former leader of the NDP, said that when he was the leader of the opposition, he never would have accepted the kind of gag order that your government and Mr. Trudeau's government was attempting to impose on me. And it's good that I'd made that decision because it has allowed me to speak freely about things like the case where one of your candidates, sir, actually said that he wanted to send a political opponent to China under a bounty threatening his life or imprisonment, and you refused to get rid of him. Now, it might have something to do with the fact that you went to China not long ago to get a $250 million loan for your company. But the reality is you refused to stand up for a Canadian who was being threatened by a foreign government, and I was able to speak freely on that matter because I refused the gag order that the Liberal government attempted to impose on me.
Well,
Okay. So, that was Pierre Poilievre explaining it for I don't know how many times.
Well, and you still hear it in the House of Commons every now and then. You still see it constantly online.
Anyway, but it's been explained many, many times. Now, so for people that are watching this, if you still don't believe this, here is now Minister David McGuinty, who was the chair of the NSICOP committee that had the NSICOP report, that they had the NSICOP briefing that would have imposed this gag order on Pierre Poilievre. So you don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe Tony. You don't have to believe Pierre. Believe a Liberal, the actual chair of the NSICOP committee. And shout out to Vesper Digital on X for putting together this compilation. And you'll see Pierre's reference to Tom Mulcair in this as well.
You have to understand, and Canadians have to understand, that the members of the committee are bound by the Security of Information Act. The members of the committee waived their parliamentary privilege for the privilege to sit on this committee. That means if they inadvertently reveal information, they can be prosecuted. The members of the committee are bound to this Security of Information Act for the rest of their lives. Madam Speaker, members all hold a top secret security clearance, have sworn an oath, and are permanently bound to secrecy under the Security of Information Act. Madam Speaker, we cannot claim parliamentary privilege in the case of an authorized disclosure of classified information. That is a point I want to emphasize. Members of the committee, myself included, are necessarily circumspect in what we can say in Parliament and in public. It also means that NSICOP members are subject to prosecution under the Security of Information Act should they disclose information that they learned in the course of their duties on the committee.
Okay, I just want to wrap up then with a final point then for those who are having trouble understanding why not reading the report is actually a good thing. You agree with Poilievre not to read it. I still don't really get that. Does that mean you just sort of wash your hands of it, leave it
No,
up
not
to
at
the
all.
inquiry?
You can have a member of your party who has access to that information. And one of the things that you have to do when you do look at that information is to say that you're not going to reveal any of it, be that as it may. I think that Poilievre was wise not to tie his own hands. I would never want to be hamstrung because I looked at a government document. I would never want to be told that I can't ask all the questions I want of the government. And I think that on this, Poilievre is completely right.
So, this is what it comes down to. You have the chair, the Liberal chair of the NSICOP committee, the committee that Justin Trudeau actually set up, telling reporters that, yes, you can be prosecuted if you reveal anything as a result of actually getting this specific type of briefing. This is the issue. You can't talk about it, and you can't act on it. So what the heck's the point? Seriously, what is the point of getting this briefing if you literally cannot do anything else? And this is what I mean. Let's say Pierre Poilievre, hypothetically, takes this briefing and finds out that Jim Bob, the MP,
The Conservative MP,
is operating as a collaborator with a foreign state, right? Let's just say that that's happening. Guess what Pierre Poilievre can't do?
Anything.
Anything.
That's what he can't do.
He can't kick him out of caucus. He can't deliberately, start withholding information. He can't do anything. And he can't talk about it. He can't even say, hey, you may want to look at Jim Bob over there. He could be prosecuted and go to jail. And that is for life. So that's the big problem here. Now, why are we talking about this now? This is not new. Well, there's a reason why we're talking about this. And the reason why we're talking about this is because back in 2017, an individual filed a court case on this because what this meant is that the Prime Minister could restrict the parliamentary privilege of certain MPs that actually receive this type of briefing, which is what Pierre has been saying this whole time. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for anybody who is still questioning this security clearance issue, you don't have to listen to me. You don't have to listen to Tanya. You don't have to listen to Pierre. You don't even have to listen to David McGuinty, and you don't even have to listen to Tom O'Carroll. But there is one body that you must listen to, and that is
the Supreme Court of Canada.
The Supreme Court of Canada. What am I talking about? Let's take a look. Parliament can limit lawmakers' free speech in narrow circumstances. Supreme Court rules. This came out Friday, folks. Friday, May 1st.
A Supreme Court of Canada ruling on Friday allows a Prime Minister with a majority government in Parliament to curtail the free speech of MPs and senators in narrow circumstances. The 8-1 decision focused on a constitutional challenge launched 8 years ago in the lower courts by a Lakehead University law professor. In 2017, the federal government created a special committee of parliamentarians with top secret clearance to review national security and intelligence operations. It reports to the Prime Minister, but it included a compromise. Committee members cannot reveal what they learned to their colleagues in Parliament unless they are authorized by the Prime Minister. This was considered an abrogation of the centuries-old right of MPs and senators to speak freely in Parliament without fear of any legal consequences. That right is a fundamental pillar of Canadians' democracy. But the Security Committee law meant that revealing secrets in Parliament, even those in the obvious public interest, could lead to the arrest and jailing of MPs or senators. Professor Ryan Alford at the Lakehead in Thunder Bay, Ontario, took the federal government to court in 2018. He argued there is an absolute right of free speech in Parliament imbued in the Constitution. He won at the Ontario Superior Court of Justice in 2022, but lost in 2024 at the Ontario Court of Appeal. On Friday, Justice Malcolm Rowe, writing on behalf of the 8-1 majority that included Chief Justice Richard Wagner, stated that the Constitution allows Parliament and provincial legislatures to define their privileges. This includes imposing some limits on free speech in arenas such as the House of Commons. The ruling means a prime minister with a majority government can set the rules. Legal experts say it also means a minority government with the support of opposition MPs can collectively curtail their right to speak freely in Parliament. But Justice Rowe made clear that any limitations, quote, cannot fundamentally alter or undermine Parliament's role within Canada's constitutional order, end quote. In the case at hand, the Supreme Court determined that the restrictions on parliamentary free speech in 2017's National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians Act was, quote, a narrow limitation of parliamentary privilege, end quote. Quote, it does not affect free speech in Parliament more broadly, end quote, Justice Rowe wrote. In 2017, the majority government under former Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau passed the Security Committee law. The Conservatives, NDP, and Bloc Québécois voted against it. This would have been when the Liberals had a majority. On Friday, the federal government welcomed the Supreme Court ruling. The Security Committee, quote, has performed an important and necessary oversight function since it was created, end quote, said David Taylor, a spokesman for Public Safety Minister Gary Anasangari, in an email. Quote, this decision means its work can continue uninterrupted, end quote. In a dissent at the Supreme Court, Justice Suzanne Cote said the limitations in the Security Committee law were too broad. She said the federal government overstepped its constitutional authority.
Okay, what does all that mean? What that means is that the Supreme Court says that those who take the NSICOP briefing and those who commit to serving on the NSICOP committee are bound. And the Prime Minister can say, nope, you cannot talk about anything that you learn in those briefings and in that material, and you cannot do anything. Just as David McGuinty said, just as Pierre Poilievre has said from the beginning. Now, one very important point that the article mentioned at the end, just in case this gets misinterpreted online. This does not mean that Mark Carney can wave his hands and prevent MPs from speaking about oil and gas. He can't wave his hand and prevent MPs from speaking about the Prescribe IT issue for ArriveCAN, SDTC, Brookfield, any conflict of interest investigations. He cannot do that. That's been established by the Supreme Court. If he tries to do that, good luck with that. What that means is if he tries to censor MPs and they continue to talk about it, they're not going to be arrested and they're not going to be prosecuted.
Well, because you can't try to censor them on those cases. As the article said, it is in very specific circumstances, very narrow scope.
So I very much appreciate the fact that the Supreme Court in their ruling not only ruled on the issue at hand, which is the NSICOP committee, that's the National Security Council for something in parliamentarians, but they also ruled on the boundaries of the actual power of the Prime Minister in terms of curtailing the parliamentary privilege. Now, remember, parliamentary privilege is an MP's right and ability to actually execute their parliamentary duties. So, casting votes, speaking in the House, representing their constituents, that's all upholding and executing the privilege of a member of parliament. Basically doing their jobs. So when you hear somebody raising a question of privilege or violating privilege, that's essentially saying something is impeding that member of parliament from being able to do their job properly. So that's a very important distinction in this ruling right here. They're saying if you take the briefing, yeah, the Prime Minister can say you can't say anything about it. But that's it. The Prime Minister can't just go off willy-nilly and stop you from talking about Brookfield.
Well, and the inverse of this means that the Prime Ministers, meaning Justin Trudeau and now Mark Carney, either of them could provide this information to Pierre Poilievre and permit him to speak about this stuff publicly and in Parliament.
And I want to go back to something that Carney had said in the
debate?
No, in the... Wow, my words are not coming to me today. Anyway, in the video earlier, where he said, I've already gotten my security clearance, I've applied for it, and I don't understand the problem. Because the Prime Minister's security clearance is vastly different than everybody else's security clearance. The Prime Minister's security clearance, he gets access to see whatever he wants, but there's a very important distinction and privilege that the Prime Minister has. He gets to reveal whatever he wants, within reason, to the public if he believes it is in the public interest to do so. People that serve on the NSICOP committee, people that take the NSICOP briefing, like Yves Blanchette, like Jagmeet Singh, like Elizabeth May, like Pierre Poilievre, they are not allowed to decide that something's in the public interest and disclose it. And the article made that very, very clear. The ruling makes that very, very clear. So, what does this mean? I wouldn't even say it's necessarily a bad thing that this ruling came out, because number one, it just validates
that Pierre was right.
That Pierre has been right all along. Oh, surprise, surprise. Pierre was right and the Liberals were wrong. Breaking news. So he's been right all along on this again. The Liberals have been wrong on this all along again. And even more than that, it's obvious that the Liberals have been lying their keisters off all along again. Because one clip I didn't bother showing you is David McGuinty is now out there questioning why Pierre Poilievre doesn't have a security clearance. Like, dude, back in June of 2024, you were out there talking to reporters, telling everybody this is what happens if you get the security clearance. You can't say anything. So I actually loved this ruling because it completely validated everything that Pierre said, and it sets guardrails around Mark Carney, and that he can't just censor people willy-nilly.
Yeah, it was a great birthday present.
So this is I think a really, really strong win from this. So anybody out there that is asking for the security clearance, just check the video. You'll see the link to that article. You can say, you want questions around the security clearance now? Go read this, because the Supreme Court of Canada has ruled on it. There's no more appeals. It's final. And Pierre was right all along. Now, the great thing about meeting Pierre in Port Colborne yesterday was we got to chat with him briefly. We got to take our picture with him, as many, many other people did. And if you ever get a chance to go to one of these events, make sure you're following your EDA or some of the other EDAs in your area, and you may get a chance to do that, is that we actually got to tell him about this. And I don't think he knew about this story.
No, it didn't seem like he did. So, you know, he didn't really say much, but he had a bit of a smile on his face when we were like, you were right, and this proves it.
So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, but this is great ammunition for Pierre and the Conservatives to just throw back at the Liberals and say, what, you know, don't you respect the rule of law? Don't you respect the Supreme Court? Because they've ruled on this, guys. Are you trying to say the Supreme Court's wrong? Well, too bad.
And just one quick tip, if you are interacting with people online who are still asking, why doesn't Pierre have a security clearance? Don't say, well, Northern Perspective said blah, 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 because they'll dismiss us as a source, unfortunately. Just point to the Supreme Court ruling or that Globe and Mail article, and that'll do the talking for you.
Or you can point them to the timestamp where David McGuinty is specifically saying that people will be prosecuted. That's a good one too. But anyhow, so that was one win that we got this week, and so that was a blow to this just stupid narrative that has been going around for years about Pierre Poilievre. Like, he can't get a security clearance because and his family is.
Well, this way I don't know if it's bots or if it's real people just regurgitating this stuff online, because, you know, we had proof before, but now the Supreme Court has made this ruling and it's airtight.
Yep. So, so there you go. And anyone worried about Carney, you know, censoring, you know, the random MPs in Parliament, he cannot. He can try, but the Conservatives can just like hold up the Supreme Court ruling, be like, good try, buddy. And then they'll keep talking. So I am not worried about that one bit. And I guarantee you the Conservatives aren't worried about that one bit.